I have an application that's already set up to use Exact Forms Plus that obviously has our document templates and subtables. So assuming your application is set up to use Exact Forms Plus, we're going to talk about our Exact Forms Plus configurator. So when you go to your document templates table and there's a record in there after you do the setup, you should see these two buttons more like for accessing the configurator. You'll also see another button over here. I have some extra ones because I have a beta version, so you won't see those. But you'll see this one, and you'll probably see this one once you have a record in your subtable. If you don't have a record in your subtable, you won't see that. The real main difference between these buttons is this one here is going to help you select the fields that need to appear in the master section of your template. Master section, what I mean by that is it's the section that's coming from, in this case, the estimates table. Down here is where I'm going to have subtable data, so that's going to come from my items table, but master data is up here and child data or related data is going to be down in here in the subtable section. So if you'll notice, I have ~6, ~20, ~14, ~3, and you'll notice in the background in the C list, you'll see those same field IDs right here. Now, you don't have to use the configurator to enter or update your C list. So if you know you need a new field in your document template, like in this case, if I need to add another field in the PO section. I don't know if I'm going to put like ~22. I'm just guessing it's probably not the right one. But if I knew that was the field ID, then all I would have to do is come back here and I can just enter .22 if I wanted to. That's the quick and easy way. Or if you don't want to do it that way, you can use the configurator. And this will actually tell me the PO. This again is pulling up all the data from my estimates, all the fields from my estimates table. And if I sort it by field ID, I'm sure I have a PO at the end. There's my PO number. So it's 45. You notice the C list is here as well. When I check off this field 45, it puts 45 in the C list. When I hit apply changes and hit close, this will refresh and you'll see 45 in there. So there's two ways to fill your C list. You can manually do it quickly by editing the record and entering a dot numeric value. It's got to be numeric value. Don't put commas, because we do have customers that go in there and just decide, hey, I'm going to use commas. That doesn't work. So it's got to be dot notated, and you just have to have a valid field ID. What I do recommend, what I've seen other people do, is someone will just go in here and just go through and go 1.2.3.4 and then go all the way through to 100, because they don't want to have to come back in and select fields at a later time. I don't recommend you do that. I do recommend that you select valid field IDs. It helps us pull in the exact fields you want in the document template, and nothing more. So that's one way to do this. And another way to do it is, well, one other thing I want to point out is when you're doing subtables, you're going to use this add document subtable. Now, when you're in here, you can also add a subtable from here by going to the configurations and clicking add new subtable configuration. A lot of times people don't do that. I see a lot of people just use this to just select your master data. You won't be able to change the table either, because we don't want you to change the table. So if it's set up for the estimates already, you don't want to change it to another table. But again, you're going to choose your master data here. You can add a subtable configuration here, or you can come here and add a subtable configuration here. And what does that mean? Well, in my template, I might want to have more than just master data. Obviously, I want to have my estimate details, and I want it to be in this section here. So in order to do that, I need to get the data from my line items table. So again, if I go to my estimates table and I pull up one of my estimates, I have all of these items. So I want my output document to almost look like that. So I want to have my parent information over here, and I want my item data here. So in order to do that, I'm going to need to use the subtable configurator to select the fields I need. So I would just go in here and click add new subtable. One thing I want to make sure you don't do as well is the document subtables. It does come with a default button up here, add new subtable button. Don't use that either, because all that's going to do is going to add a blank field, record in this table. That's not how we populate the document subtables table. So you can hide that button if you want, but a lot of times by default, it's not hidden. So I just wanted to point that out, that don't use the new document subtable button in the upper right. When you want to add a subtable configuration, you got to do it from here. So basically, when you click on the add new subtable or document subtable, we load the screen and we give you a drop down to let you see all of the tables in the application that you might want to choose to show item data. So in my case, line items. I'm just going to give it a name and just call it line item test. This means nothing, so you can put whatever you want in there. This is obviously important because it's the table that you want the data to come from. If you go next, it's going to take you to the filter criteria. We pre-populate this based on the relationship, if one exists, between the tables. I know I have an estimate to line items relationship, so we pre-populate that. Now, a lot of times you don't have to do anything more than that. If you just want to pull up all of the line items associated with an estimate and nothing more, you can leave that alone. However, let's say you want to make a little bit more of an advanced query. You can say, well, I only want to pull items where the status is equal to the value, a static value of, let's say, in stock. Because I know I have a field called item status that has a value of in stock. If I do that, that's the way to create a more complex query or filter query. We don't support ORs just yet. So if you need to use ORs, so in other words, if you want to say, well, where the related estimate or item status is in stock, you really have to do that through a field in Quickbase on your table. And that's a little bit more advanced. So I won't go too far into that yet. So this is all ands. If you need to do ORs, you would create another field in your table and you would put your complex logic in there. And then you would come in here and basically say, well, where that complex field is true or false. That's the best way to do that. So moving on here, so I'm going to choose all of the line items from my line items table that's related to the estimate. And now here's the columns that I want to see. So I'm not sure what columns I want to show. So if I go back to my estimate and pull up the configurator again over here, maybe I want to show my item, and you can sort these, you can filter them. But all you need to do is check off the columns in the list that in the items table that you want to show. So in this case, I want to show item. And when you click it, it doesn't disappear. If you scroll back up, it's up there. Okay, so I'm going to choose that. I'm just going to choose the item. Maybe I'm going to choose quantity. And you know what? I should have chose quantity first. Well, I'm just going to move it up. So now quantities first. And I won't choose anything else, but because I have some pre-configured ones. But what you could do is you can now change the width. So quantity, 50 pixels is good because this is in pixels. 72 pixels is about an inch, just to give you some reference point. Item is usually a little bit longer, so maybe I'm going to throw, maybe I want that to be 125. And I'm going to hit save changes. Every time you make a change in here, or when you click the event settings, you want to hit save changes. And you know what? I'm not going to do anything further. I just want to clear out because I want to show you what happens in Quickbase. So after we're done with that quick setup, and I go to my document subtables table, you're going to see a new record. The line item test record was created. These configuration parameters are really what we just selected when we were in that configurator. And you don't need to know what this means, but in the olden days, before we had the configurators, you had to hand type that out, which you don't have to do now. But you can always go back in and make your changes. So the one important thing to note that is this says strid equals 3. And that's an important piece because what we want to do is we want to go back to our document template. And I'm going to put in tilde strid equals 3 tilde. And really what that says is go to the subtable record ID number 3 and go gather the data based on those parameter settings that are there. So once I put strid equals 3 in there and I hit save on this, I'm going to upload that into my document templates table. I only have one document template right now, so I'm just going to upload my newly changed document. And now when I go to my estimates and I click on my generate EFP document, we should see a document generated with just 2 columns in it. There's the quantity, and there's the item. So those are the two columns that I selected when I was in the configurator. Okay, so I'm going to go back to a different one that I created. So I'm going to go back to my templates table. And you know what? I'll just upload a new one. I'm going to change this to be stred equals 1. And I'm going to re-upload that one. So I'm just changing the subtable configuration because I had one pre-configured prior to the meeting. So now this one now is pointing to stred equals 1. So the next time I click my estimates, I'm going to get a different subtable look. And all I really did was I selected a couple more columns. But that's great. So here I selected 4 different columns in the configurator, and I chose the fields I want. But you know what? I want to dress it up a little bit more because I want to make it look a little bit fancier. Maybe I want a subtotal. Maybe I want to do a couple custom things here to these columns. So I'm going to close this. I'm going to go back to my document template, and I'm going to look for stred equals 1 because that's the one I'm messing with here. And I'm going to, instead of clicking this one, I'm going to click the beta version of our configurator because we have a couple new things that we want to show in there. So when I click on this button associated to this stred, it's going to preload that configuration with all the columns that were already selected. Here I could change the filter criteria if I want. I could choose additional fields, but more importantly, I can modify some of these. So I can change the width if I want that column to be a little bit wider or shorter. I could do that. If I don't like the word quantity and I don't want to change the field name in Quickbase, I can quickly go over here and just say, I want it to say QTY instead of quantity. And that will change the header only in the output document. It's not going to change the field name in Quickbase. But I also want to go to the advanced settings. I want to take a look at what's available to me there. Okay, so this is what you're going to see that's new. We have a new thing called column header properties. So in the past, you can never control the header. For, meaning font size, justification, bold, italicized, and so on. You can always do that to the data, but you can never do that to the header. You will be able to do that once we release the beta version. So I can say, all right, I'm just going to mess around here. I'm going to right justify this. I'm going to bold and italicize. I'm going to change the font to be Arial, and I'm going to make it a bigger size. So I'm going to make it a little silly. I'm going to make it 19. I'm going to leave the data alone because I still want the data to be the default setting. So I'm not going to touch that. I'm going to hit apply changes. And I'm going to hit save. And I'm going to close out because I want to regenerate that document and just see those changes that I made. So now what we're going to see is the quantity is going to change to be QTY, but the column header label. But also look, I changed it to be Arial, bold, and italicized. The other column headers are still the same. So you can control them individually, just like you can control the data individually. And that's something that's new. It's not available in the existing configurator, but this is going to be something new that we're releasing. So you got to see that. One other thing that we've released as well, or we're going to be releasing, is let's say I want to alternate the row shading. So I want to, there's a field that lives in the items table. I'm going to show that first. So in the items table, there's a field, I added a field called row color. And what I'm basically doing is I'm looking at the status of each item. And I'm saying, well, if it's out of stock, I want to show red. If it's back ordered, I want to show orange. If it's low stock, yellow. And if it's in stock, I can use an HTML color as well. So I don't have to use these hard-coded colors. You can use HTML colors. So basically what that's saying is I want to colorize each row based on a field here. And so really what this is called is dynamic row coloring for your child data. So if I go back to the configurator, if we go to a new setting here, you can see that we already used to do row shading, and we also allowed you to do alternate row shading, but this is something new here. We're going to say dynamic row shading. So now I'm going to choose that field on the items table called row color, and I'm going to save that. All right, so the next time I run and generate this document, you're gonna get a different view here. So looks a little like Candyland, but just to try to show you the point is we're not just allowing you to alternate row shade. You don't have to shade them all the same color. You can dynamically colorize each one of those rows. So that's something new. Now, the other thing we want to do, so the two new things is you can control the headers and you can dynamically control the colors of each row. But what I want to show now is some advanced features that you have today with the configurator. And one of them might be, maybe I want to sum that total. So it's great that I can show each individual line item, but maybe I want to show a subtotal there. So let's close that. Let's go back into our configurator. So I'm going to go to my document template. I'm going to go to STRID1, which is this one. I'm going to click on the configurator and let's subtotal that last column. So I'm going to go right to the subtotal fields. The item total is one that I want to subtotal. Now, if you're not grouping, you can just simply grand total or subtotal, either one, doesn't matter. It's only going to show one total. So I'm going to apply that. Now, the other thing you can do is and also hit save changes. But what I also want to do is maybe I want to include the word total in one of the columns. So the column right next to the one that I'm totaling is the description column. So when I come over to my subtotal and grouping, sorting and grouping, I want to display in the description column the word total. And I only want to do that on a total line. And you know what? Maybe I want to give it a little bit of shading. I'll give it a little bit of pink shading. And I'm just going to click next and hit save. So now the next time I generate that document, we're going to see a total line and we're going to see some shading involved there. See, there's my total line. It totaled up everything. It's shaded pink. And the word total appears in the description field. So that might be one of the confusing things is when you're in the configurator, you might not know where to actually put the total. So I go back into the configurator and I go to sorting and grouping. This drop down here is basically saying in the description column, show the word total. Okay. You can also choose display a field from the table and it'll so that could be a dynamic label, if you will. So you would choose a field from the actual table itself. But for this point, we're just showing static. But also, if I want to add a subtotal, because maybe I want to group, because maybe I want to group by that status. So let's come back up here and let's say, all right, I want to actually group by another field. So I'm going to group by the item status, and I want to left justify that group. Maybe I want to put a little bit of color in there. Let's use maybe a shade of teal. That's fine. I can also change the font size of that. Maybe let's make that a little bit bigger. And let's bold it as well. Okay.
Hey Keith, did that grab? I don't know if that color grabbed for.
Oh, how to color? Maybe it did. Oh, I didn't hit apply. Okay. Thanks, Matt. And I can also control the font color too. So if I wanted something darker to be in there, I could do that. But the default is black anyway, so we'll leave that alone. But I also want to show do a subtotal, and I'm going to subtotal in the same column in the description column. I'm going to put the word sub. So now the next time I'm going to just hit next and hit save. And now the next time we generate this document, it's going to look a lot different. So I should have some grouping involved, and I should have a subtotal as well as a total. Okay, so I'm grouping by this one item here had nothing in the item status. That's why it's blank. But I have back ordered, I have in stock, I have low stock, I have out of stock, and I have, wait, the subtotal didn't take. Let's just make sure the subtotal, let me go back to that. Just make sure the subtotal, if I didn't save that right. So,
Hey, did you click it in the subtotal field, kid?
item status. Here's subtotal label options. This let's just make sure that's
But in the subtable fields, then you have to check the checkbox for subtotal.
no, it should show up now because I see it in the settings.
Mm.
Let's go back here. Not seeing it there. Oh, I know what you're saying, Matt.
And when the advanced settings,
I didn't choose anything to subtotal. Good call. I said I wanted to subtotal stuff, but I never checked off anything to subtotal. There it is, right there. So I had no columns set to subtotal. That's why it didn't subtotal. So now, once I chose my subtotal, now these settings should be picked up. It did have them in there, but I never chose anything to subtotal. So let's do that. There we go. So there's just the word sub. And it's subtotaling each one of these groupings. And then we have a full total at the bottom. Okay, I could have right justified that too if I wanted the sub to show here. I could have done that too. So you have a lot of flexibility in terms of what you can do with your formatting of your subtotal data, subtable data. One more thing I want to show. Let's see. Back in here. Oh, you notice I click this button a lot, so I'm generating a lot of documents. Obviously, we do charge you for usage. So one way to make these changes and do a lot of testing on your own without it costing you money, add a new parameter to your button called test equals and set it to be yes. Okay, when you run an Exact Forms Plus document with test equals yes, we don't charge that against your usage. So but the only difference is when you click the button, it's going to have a watermark. And it won't allow you to create a Word document. It only allows you to create a PDF. And it doesn't save the PDF back to Quickbase. So you basically just get to view it. So test equals yes will allow you to do this messing around. So you can play around with stuff and you can practice a little bit to see what settings might make sense for you and which ones don't.